Namco's Splatterhouse series started as an arcade release in 1988. It featured gruesome side-scrolling action that was filled with a level of violence and gross-out imagery you typically didn't see at the time. When a home version showed up, it was the PC Engine and TurboGrafx-16 that got the call, and it was a remarkable conversion. Most of the stage layouts were faithful, and it even kept much of its visual punch. It quickly became one of my favorites, and I replayed it countless times to see everything it had to offer. A few years would go by before we saw any more games in the series, but that finally happened in 1992, and on the Sega Genesis of all places. Splatterhouse 2 was more of what made the original so good, with developer Now Production doubling down on the arcade-style action. But while I enjoyed it, it received quite the mixed reaction. Some gaming magazines loved it, while others were extremely tough on it. It sold well, however, and in 1993, a sequel showed up once again, courtesy of Now Production. But this one did not follow the arcadey design of the first and second. In fact, it was a wholly new experience that changed the formula completely. In this episode, just in time for Halloween, we will take a look at Splatterhouse 3, talk a bit about how it changed things, and see if it's worth playing today. Hope you guys enjoy my review of Splatterhouse 3 for your Sega Genesis. The story in Splatterhouse 3 takes a curious turn for the better, at least at first. Both Jennifer and Rick survive the events of Part 2 and get back to a normal life. They do well, hitting it big in stocks, and eventually have a son named David. Life is good and they decide to move to a small town in Connecticut and settle down. But their new fairy tale life comes to a crashing halt as the Evil One returns looking for the Dark Stone. It seems your son's psychic abilities are key to this demon's plans, and both Jennifer and David are taken. Once again, the terror mask calls to you, so you can have the power to rescue them both. Yup, hard to believe this crap is happening to the same guy 3 times now. Fortunately, Rick does have some new moves as he heads out on his adventure. Gone are the simple side-scrolling action moves of the first 2, now replaced with a fully fleshed out beat-em-up engine that allows you a lot more freedom in how you attack. Normally, Rick has the ability to punch his enemies, apply a jump kick, and grab them for headbutts and multiple types of throws. Rick also has a move called the quad spin kick, which hits enemies all around him. This is accomplished by using a fighting game style command of pushing the directional pad toward, away, and then towards your enemy really fast and hitting the attack button. But where things really get interesting is when you use your power gauge at the bottom left hand corner. You'll notice that as you play you will come across orbs that increase this power. Once it's charged, hit the mutate button and witness Rick hulk out into a massive brute with even more moves at your disposal. While you are powered up, your basic punch attack and jump kicks do even more damage. As before, Rick has many attack types after he grabs an enemy. You can choke, body punch, throw both forwards and backwards, and even do a wrestling-style megaton driver. Mutated Rick also has a move that causes his guts to shoot out and hit everything around him. This is done by pressing away, towards, and away and attack quickly, or basically the opposite of the regular power move. The bad news is that the power gauge slowly depletes as you're mutated, so use these moves wisely. As far as navigation, Splatterhouse 3 gives you a bit of choice in how you play the levels. Some rooms have multiple exits, which lead to different paths throughout the level. This is really important because you'll notice there is a timer at the top of the screen. That timer means everything because it determines the endings you'll see. Take too much time and as you can imagine, the endings get worse. As you clear out all the enemies in the room, check that map and be sure to plot the most efficient course to the boss. White doors indicate a one-way path and yellow doors act as sort of a shortcut or warp around the level. Some rooms are tougher than others, so keep that in mind. You do get some help in the form of weapons sprinkled out the rooms. 2x4s, bats, cinder blocks, knives, and cleavers. There are also life replenishment in the form of hearts. Should you fail and lose all your lives, be sure to write that password down. Splatterhouse 3 is both a step forward and a step backwards visually. I love Rick's new look. Even when not powered up, he is much more fearsome looking. The monsters are suitably nasty looking as well, complete with damage animations that often have them losing body parts, blood, and guts. When they die, they melt into a pile of goo. It's on a 16 megabit cartridge, and there's no question the sprite work is very nice. The biggest issue I have with the graphics is pretty much the location. The vast majority of the game takes place inside a mansion, so you are essentially just looking at walls, bookcases, and furniture. Things do look run down, and there is the occasional gore spread throughout, but there's nothing here as far as memorable set pieces, special effects, or eye-catching parallax. It's very plain, almost vanilla considering the story that takes place around it. One of the things that made the original Splatterhouse and even its sequel such a classic was the location. It was so wildly aggressive and felt just as threatening as the enemies within it. Not so with Part 3. The location should have been a huge part of the presentation, yet it just seems like it's there to give you backgrounds and something to look at. That leaves me quite mixed on the visuals. I like the new look of the main character and the damage the enemies take, but the backgrounds need major work. This leaves our environment sterile, without personality, and this just isn't how you want things in this type of game. I hate to say it, but when it comes to the graphical presentation of Splatterhouse 3, things could have and should have been a lot better. Fortunately, the sound picks up the ball and scores a touchdown. This is a great sounding title as far as music and the majority of the sound effects. It adds so much to the atmosphere, it almost makes up for the ho-hum backdrops. A lot of it sounds like it's paying respect to the original game, and that's just fine by me. Let's have a listen to some of the selections to see if you feel the same way. Looking at Splatterhouse 3 on a whole, there's a lot here to like. The gameplay is fun, and there are many moves to learn and use to beat down your foes. The combat is responsive, and it's done well enough that it keeps you engaged the entire time. Enemies range from easy fodder you just walk up to and smash, to monsters you need to approach in a variety of different ways to mitigate their attacks. There's some real strategy in that. The time limit and the endings it influences really make for a compelling ride as well. It creates a tension that is always clawing at your nerves, and that contributes heavily to a successful horror product. No joke, getting the better endings requires many failed exploration attempts to see which is the best route to take. The cinematics that tell the story at the beginning, middle, and end are also suitably creepy. It's black and white, but the imagery feels like something you would have seen in the 60s or 70s, which also adds to the retro vibe perfectly. Subject matter, like a giant worm feasting on your wife's internal organs and brain, is the stuff of nightmares. I also want to really praise the music again. I really enjoyed it, and I feel it added so much to the overall journey. But I'd be lying if I told you this game is awesome all the way around. As I mentioned, I feel the visuals lack a certain punch the two previous games landed with impact. This is mainly due to the backgrounds not featuring any real special effects or standout artistic designs. I've seen better in 8-bit releases, and they do a disservice to the setting, the story, and the characters. That of course brings about the question, do the backgrounds ruin the entire experience? Is the not scary at all location that much of a hindrance? Absolutely not. Fortunately, where the scenery fails, the sprite work, the gameplay, cinematics, and music make it all the better. They elevate the feelings of uneasiness and the macabre to a level that sustains the entire adventure. I can only imagine how much better this could have been with a little more work on the visuals, but I will take Splatterhouse 3 as it is, because it's a great ride while it lasts. If you want some advice while playing Splatterhouse 3, take your time and don't be afraid to fail the first dozen or so play sessions. That time limit can be tough to combat, and you'll need some practice with the various rooms and shortcuts until you understand the best way through. Not everything is as obvious as it may seem. Once you get your bearings and become familiar with the maps, this becomes a great beat 'em up with a creepy story and excellent music. And many of the publications at the time felt so as well. Electronic Gaming Monthly said it was fun and rated it strong, and GamePro absolutely raved about it, giving it a nearly perfect score. Surprisingly, it was the UK magazines that were somewhat down on the game. They usually harped on originality and replay value, but otherwise admitted it was a good time. And I think most of you will agree with that. No matter how you feel in the end, I think you will at least have had a bit of fun with this one. It wasn't just a rehash of the previous games, and I think that was the right move by the developers at Now Production. What is curious is that a few places on the internet have claimed that the MA13 rating came as a result of things being toned down to avoid a higher mature content label. Could this be the reason the background graphics lack the same level of violence and gore seen in the previous games? It's a good question, and I wonder what this could have been had the developers been given their freedom to design what they had wanted. Luckily, we are still left with a very solid game, and one that should entertain you quite well during a dark and stormy evening. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.